is Chloë Bowers, and I'm the forum moderator at finegardening.com and also a regional reporter for the Northeast. And I'm talking today about winter sowing. So here I have a container of goldenrod that I prepared last winter. It's ready to plant today on this beautiful June day. And what I did was I took my milk jug and water jug in this case, and instead of recycling it, I cut it across its equator. And all you need for this is a pair of scissors. It's really they're pretty flexible. In the bottom, I poked some drainage holes, and then I threw away the cap. Because what you want the moisture and the snow and to get inside this container to give your seeds the cold moist stratification that they need. Some plants actually need that in order to germinate. They need a period where they can freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw, and that triggers their germination. Some seeds do not necessarily need it, but they benefit from it regardless. Any cold hardy plant benefits from it, and your germination will be increased by using this method. So, so I cut it. I like to use the handle as a hinge, so I've gone right to the point where the handle is, and then I put in about 2 or 3 inches of my potting mix. In my case, I just use this Pro Mix, and it doesn't have any fertilizer in it, and it doesn't have any moisture control. Those two things are important, especially for native plants, which is what I prefer. This is what I focus on. Because their fertilization requirements are generally pretty minimal, and I like to be able to control it myself, so I don't use something with fertilizer. So I filled it with soil. I put my seed in, and in this case it was sprinkled on top. Just follow the directions that are on your seed packet, and then I taped. I closed it back up, and I taped the equator with some packing tape, which I find holds very well. I know some people use painter's tape, but I think it's, this is not the most beautiful thing to have on your deck in any case, or on your patio. So the painter's tape for me is just a little bit too much. And so so I've opened this up once the days in, I guess, April started to get, reach 70 or so. I opened it up and I left it sitting on my patio for a while and let them grow a bit. And now they're starting to, I haven't fed them very much, so they're a bit on the yellow side, but they will quickly take and be absolutely fine. So if you're not ready to plant your babies out in your garden, a good option is to pot them up individually and grow them on for a little while, because it may be that that you're worried about seedlings being taken over by weeds or being eaten or whatever it may be. You may have a reason you'd like to delay, and I frequently do. So I'm looking to put these these Joe Pye weeds here. I'm looking to put in a relatively wild area. So I want them to be a little bit bigger, and I want them to be able to to compete with the bittersweet and everything else that's over there. So I'm going to show you how you take these out of the container and break them apart and pot them up. So I've taken the lid off. You could keep it on. It just makes it easier. I mean, if you wanted to reuse this, you'd want to keep the top on. This one is, I think, on its 3rd year, so I'm gonna let it go. So I've taken the lid off, and they do start to get a little bit brittle after a while, which is something to keep an eye on, because you don't want little bits of plastic everywhere. So it's best to recycle them after a year or 2. Okay, so here we go. And these can they really can take quite a bit of manhandling. But I kind of have, you can see here I have like there's kind of a natural break between the clumps. So I'm going to take this side out, you know, whatever they got moved around over the winter, so didn't germinate evenly. And they're not, I mean, they're pretty young. I do have 2 sets of true leaves, which is, I like to wait until I have 2 sets of true leaves. And they still have their seed leaves as well. But, and then, you know, I'm going to actually save this little clump for an area in the garden that I want to plant it in, just because they're so tiny. I'm going to go with makes a nice little clump like that. I'm going to go with these bigger guys to put in pots, which is I just know that in the area where I'm going to put the smaller clump, I don't have any competition. I can keep an eye on them. There's like nothing over there. So that's why I'm making that decision. And then you're just going to tease them apart gently. And you know, you've got plenty to lose. So don't worry too much about, you know, all these little, like this is too small for me to pot up. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go for these big guys. You know, and this soil is so light. This is why it's important to use a good mix that's just going to fall off, and not, you know, nothing with like big bark chunks or anything like that that'll cling to your roots and possibly damage them. So just for insurance here, I'm going to put 3 in the one pot. And really it's a pretty quick transition, and I don't think they're going to be much bothered by that. I don't think Joe Pye would be much bothered by anything, so it's it's a good bet. It's a a solid one for winter sowing, because it's just so tough. And here I'm just going to keep working it. It's good for the mix to be a little bit drier ideally than this is, but we've had so much rain lately they don't really have that option. But it's better when it's drier, because you know the heavier mix clings to your roots and can break them. Okay, so here I've got two decent ones. Put that one in. Get in there. And you know, like with anything, you just make sure that all your roots are tucked in well. Firm it up. And then I'll do one more, and I'm actually going to take out these smaller ones. Just reduce it to the big one. Well, yeah, let's go for 3 again. Okay. And some people tell me sometimes that they're worried about breaking the roots and and kind of scared to just dig in there. But I find that especially at this age where they're still not, they really haven't grown together too much, that they're absolutely fine, separated, transplanted, and they're going to take off. So I'm ready to plant my Joe Pye weed chunk in a spot in my garden, and these are the smaller seedlings from that container, and they're very close together. They're a little, for whatever reason, I don't know why this happens, but they're less not as far along as the others. It always seems to happen in the containers. You get a couple that are just taken off, and some that are just sort of, maybe because they're so packed together. Anyway, this is in winter sowing what they call a hunk of seedlings, or so I think it's something like that. And this is absolutely fine. You do not have to separate these when you're putting them in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just not really disturbing them at all from when I initially took them out. And I mean, it's really as simple as, oh gosh, I have a hunk of grass in here. Great. And I'll just firm it down a little bit. And I'm not worried about the ones on the edge getting kind of clobbered. It doesn't matter. And I mean, I'm putting in the Joe Pyeweed, but and it is particularly vigorous, as we're probably most gardeners are aware. But most species will be fine with this treatment. So you don't have to baby it. You don't have to worry about breaking them apart. You just put your little hunk in there and water it and walk away. Here is an example of a winter sowing plant that's gone a little bit too far. It's right on the edge. I mean, I can still separate them, but you really don't want to let it get quite that large. This is a pasque flower, and it doesn't have as much germination as the Joe Pyeweed I showed you, but the plants are much further along, maybe because it's a spring plant. And I should have separated it already, but I will do that probably today and plant it, and they should be okay. But you don't want to let it get quite this far because the roots get too entangled. And I could plant the entire container, but I'd really like to get 5 or 6 pasque flowers out of this, so I will separate it today. And then another example of a plant that's gone way too far. And this is a Monarda that I never got around to planting. So this is actually 2 winters old, and I'm at this point I'm not going to separate it. I mean, with Monarda you could of course rip it apart and it'll take off, but I don't really want more than one. And I mean, this poor thing is just completely packed in there. So you can set, even if you forget to plant something, even if you don't have time, you have an emergency, you can't get to it, it doesn't really matter. So here, you'll just be looking at a milk jug for an extra year, which you might not like, but but your plant won't mind, and you can plant it.